All right, if I can get everybody to start coming back to order. 1, 2, 3, 4. Randy's right there. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Nelson's right there. Councilmember Wright's right there. Yes. All right. Thank you all very much. Okay. We are now ready to start our 7:30 regular meeting of Lynchburg City Council. If you'll please stand for the invocation by Councilmember Wright, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. Please join me in a moment of contemplation. Today we gather in service of our community. We gather to improve the quality of life for our fellow citizens and to ensure our collective safety, health, and happiness, something that is, of course, important always and especially important today. Grant us the strength and wisdom to evaluate the issues in front of us objectively, thoughtfully, and in a spirit of genuine collaboration and sincere goodwill. The challenges facing Lynchburg are great, but so too are the possibilities. We offer thanks for the many talented professionals who come to work on behalf of our city each day, and for the opportunity afforded to us here in this room to join them in this important service. With deep thanks, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have a couple of proclamations, so I will read those and recognize first is Public Works Week. And so I know I see Ms. Hart here, and if she would come up in just a moment after I'm able to read this to accept this. Let me take this off a minute. Proclamation, Public Works Week. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to a sustainable and resilient community and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Lynchburg. And whereas these infrastructures, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our community's transportation, solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for citizens to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in this community, and to offer the employees the respect and appreciation they deserve for jobs well done. And whereas the year 2020 marks the 60th annual National Public Works Week, which is sponsored by the American Public Works Association, Canadian Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Trenae L. Tweedy, Mayor of Lynchburg, Virginia, do hereby designate the week, May 17th through 23rd, 2020, Public Works Week, and urge all citizens to join Lynchburg City Council in recognizing and thanking the employees of the Public Works Department for the work they do every day and for the substantial contributions they make to protect the health, safety, and quality of life in Lynchburg. May 19th, 2020, Trenae L. Tweedy, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Hart, and if you would come up to accept that. And if you have a couple of words for our employees, thank you, and the community.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to speak. The employees have been extremely resilient during this COVID-19. We've changed their schedules and tremendously, and they've picked up a lot of extra work, and they've just done a fantastic job. We appreciate the kind words you all have said tonight, and I will definitely pass it on. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can clap. Next is Proclamation Police Week 2020. And Chief, if you would come up in just a minute after I read that to receive this. Whereas National Police Week has been designated May 10th through 16th and set aside to honor the service and sacrifice of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. And whereas there are more than 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Lynchburg Police Department, and whereas since the founding of the Lynchburg Police Department in 1805, 4 officers have given their lives in service to our community, and whereas there have been 58,866 assaults against law enforcement officers in 2018, resulting in approximately 18,005 injuries, and whereas since the first recorded death in 1786, nearly 22,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 307 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, and whereas 128 officers died in the line of duty in 2019, and 36 officers have died in the line of duty in 2020. And whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 32nd Annual Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2020, and whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now, therefore, I, Trenae Tweedy, Mayor of the City of Lynchburg, Virginia, do hereby proclaim May 10th through 16th, 2020, Police Week in the City of Lynchburg, and encourage citizens to thank the brave men and women who serve this community every day. May 12th, 2020, Trenae Tweedy, Mayor. Thank you, Chief Sudama.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of council. It's an honor to be here representing the men and women of the Lynchburg Police Department who do just incredible work each and every day. You know, the 4 members that we have lost in the line of duty, luckily the last one was in 1933, and it's through continued great training and investment in our officers, through training and financial means that you provide to them that allow us to prevent that from happening. So we're always grateful for the support that you give the police department on a lot of different fronts, and will continue to do, I know, for many, many years. These officers in today's day and age, I just asked, we did a small ceremony this morning in front of the police department with about 4 of us. That is much smaller than the hundreds we usually do, as many of you have been there to support that. I look forward to next year when you can all be there in person to support that, hopefully. But you know, as we talked about in that ceremony, you know, this time is so important to just pause for a second and remember those men and women that are out there each and every day doing just great work on behalf of all of us as citizens in this great community. So we're just grateful for that. And you know, the honor I have is I don't have to look far for heroes. I just show up at work every day and look around, and I get to work with heroes every day. So we're thankful for the support, certainly for this proclamation, and our men and women will continue through this pandemic to provide the best level of service we can and serve the citizens of this community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Tonight's City Council agenda is divided into 2 sections, consent agenda and public hearings. The first section is the consent agenda. This section includes routine items, and all items may be approved by one vote. May I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
Thank you. The motion has been made and second. And is there any further discussion? All right, thank you. Councilmember Wright, I'll be taking a voice vote.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilder?
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson? Councilmember Pero?
Aye.
Councilmember Helgelson?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dolan? Aye. Thank you, and aye, so the motion passes. This section includes all public hearings as required by law or as council may direct. Staff will make a presentation. Comments will then be solicited from the public. An individual speaker shall have 3 minutes to speak. If the speaker represents a group, the speaker shall have 5 minutes. A speaker representing a group shall identify that group at the beginning of his or her remarks, and a group may have only one spokesperson. Each speaker shall clearly state his or her name and locality of residence. Upon the conclusion of public comments, the public hearing will be closed and the matter referred to council for deliberation. Number 8 is a public hearing regarding adopting a resolution approving the allocation of the fiscal year 2021 Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, and Home Program funds, and incorporating into the fiscal year 2021 General Fund Operating Budget and Program Year, fiscal year 2020 through 2024, Consolidated Plan, and fiscal year 2021 Annual Action Plan. Staff will provide a brief summary of the request. Ms. Walker.
Good evening, Mayor Tweedy, Vice Mayor Dolan, and members of council. Tonight, City Council is conducting a public hearing on the fiscal year 2021 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Program funding recommendations of the Community Development Advisory Committee, CDAC. The city received $714,865 in CDBG funds, which was a decrease of $18,647 from the program year 2020 allocation, and $424,288 in home program funds, which was an increase of $31,424 from the fiscal year 2020 allocation. CDAC conducted a public meeting on April the 8th and reviewed the submitted CDBG and home program applications and formulated recommendations for consideration by City Council. These recommendations and project summaries have been provided to you. Council members Bo Wright and Sterling Wilder are the council-appointed members of the CDAC and participated in the recommendations. At the conclusion of the public hearing, Councilmember Wright, as chairman of the CDAC, will present these recommendations to you for approval. A public notice for this meeting was published in the news in advance and through social media. City staff has not received any written public comments prior to the meeting. However, there are 3 voicemail messages that the Clerk of Council will provide to you during the public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? All right. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Are there any emails or phone calls from citizens on this matter?
Yes, there is.
Thank you.
Enter your PIN. To send a message, press 2. You have no old messages. For setup options, you have no new messages. To send a message, press 2. You have no...
Okay, there are new messages on there, so. Oh, okay.
We're waiting on that quick technology, that's all, that's all.
I know what the problem is, but I don't know how to fix it. Hang on a second. There's 2 lines on here, and let me see if this one will work. Got it. Sorry about that. There's 2 lines on here now.
New messages. Message 1.
This is George Clay. I'm the director of the Boy Scouts for Central and Southwest Virginia. I'm calling to thank you very much for the CDAC money. We are so excited to start this new partnership and continue to grow our opportunities for young people. In these times, these monies are more important than ever, and we pledge to do our best to use these funds to serve the youth that need them the most. Thank you again for your support of the Boy Scouts of America.
Received today at saved. End of new messages. You have no new messages. To send a message, press 2. To review old messages, 3. For saved messages, Message 1.
Okay, I think these are the saved ones you're
George
talking
Clay.
about.
I'm the Director of the Boy Scouts for Central and Southwest Virginia.
Saved. Message 2.
This is Ken Lyons with the Blue Ridge Mountains Council Boy Scout. We're excited about our partnership with the Lynchburg City Parks and Rec Department to offer scouting to scouts who need it most. Was really excited to participate in the CDAC meeting and learn more about the great things that are happening in Lynchburg. And we are very hopeful that tonight you will approve our request so that we can begin our Scout Reach program as school starts back in the fall. Thank you for your consideration.
Received. To repeat, press saved. Message 3.
Greetings. My name is Jeff Smith. I serve as Executive Director of Rush Homes. I am commenting regarding the CDAC recommendations for home distribution of home funds in the 2021 year. In this unusual year with this pandemic, Rush Homes is in particular, is concerned about affordable housing in a much more significant way. We understand that the pandemic may create additional needs for affordable housing, and it is important that we know that affordable housing needs don't stop simply because of the pandemic. In fact, affordable housing, especially for at-risk populations like persons with disabilities and those who are homeless, is even more important. Rush Homes is delighted to develop Florida Avenue at 2117, Florida Terrace at 2117 Florida Avenue. 48 accessible apartments with 12 set aside for people or families who are exiting homelessness and 5 set aside for persons with developmental disabilities, and at least 50% of the apartments set aside for persons with disabilities. With its location next door to shopping, especially grocery shopping, and on the bus line, and very near Campbell Avenue, Florida Terrace not only provides affordable housing, but also important amenities that are necessary for independence. I'm grateful that the Community Development Advisory Committee saw fit to recommend the extraordinary amount of city home funding for Florida Terrace. These funds provide a match for state home funds that will make this project possible. The affordable housing that we're providing is sorely needed in Lynchburg. We also know that this situation may worsen. As I said at the beginning, we'll need housing like Florida Terrace now and in the future. Lastly, I want to thank Mayor Tweedy, Vice Mayor Dolan, and members of council for listening to this message. Thank you again for your consideration, and everyone stay safe.
Saved. Message 4.
Good evening. This is Donna Vincent speaking. I'm the Executive Director at Greater Lynchburg Habitat for Humanity, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the CDAC Committee for their recommendations to Council for the use of home funds. In our meeting with the committee, it was made very clear to us that the members took their responsibilities with great care and diligence. Habitat for Humanity made 2 appeals this year because of some additional funding that was made available. The timing of the additional money is a huge blessing. With our building pace, we have nearly depleted our inventory of buildable lots. And we've been struggling for the last 18 months to find suitable properties where we can build and sell homes to families who are working very hard to improve their circumstances, starting with an affordable home. We own several parcels at the undeveloped end of Knott Street, which is located in a neighborhood off of Ford Avenue. You access it through Ratcliffe Avenue, but right now, those properties are on a paper street, meaning the street was planned but never built. So essentially, our lots are useless to us in this state. But with the home funding we've requested and that CDAC is recommending, we can develop the paper street to the city standards, which would then make our lots accessible to build homes in partnership with 11 families. The neighborhood has homes of mixed property values, ranging from the low $80,000s to nearly $140,000. We are confident that Habitat Homes will assess at the high end of that range. Our last home in the Ford Avenue area on Edgar Street assessed for $137,000. We've submitted another request for home funds, as we have done for many years. This year, $143,000 is requested to support down payments for each of the families who will partner with Habitat. The down payment allows Habitat to offer them the house at a very affordable price with a mortgage that bears no interest. We're grateful for CDAC's recommendation. We respectfully ask that Council make this an approved decision, and all of these funds will directly benefit local families and address the goal outlined by the city in its annual action plan, which is to increase the number of affordable homeownership units. Thank you. I hope you all stay safe and healthy.
Received today. Saved. End of saved messages. You have no new messages. To send a...
That's it. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. Thank you very much. No emails. We've listened to phone calls, no emails. All right, thank you. Since there's no opposition, we have no rebuttal, and the public hearing is closed, and the matter rests with council. This did go to the Community Development Advisory Committee on April 8th, 2020, and I will turn to Councilmember Wright.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I want to express my thanks to Ms. Walker and Ms. Shepard and the city team, as well as the members of the Community Development Advisory Committee for their thoughtful deliberation, of course, for those community partners who did apply for funding. So we're really grateful to them and for their work. And happily, we were able to, the committee was able to reach, I think, a conclusion that satisfied all parties. I know you all have had a chance to read all of the applications, and so I won't sort of belabor them, but I did want to point out a couple adjustments that the committee made to the initial amounts. The first is, if you look for the CDBG non-public service, the $607,000, the committee recommends that the Biggers Park project be reduced from $150,000 to $110,000. And then $17,000 of that $40,000 applied to the Tin Bridge Hill neighborhood pedestrian improvements. And Mr. White and Ms. Jones, who are both sort of the leading those two projects, felt that was a satisfactory adjustment. On the CDBG public service allocation, we were able to recommend full funding for the CHIA position and the Scout Reach position. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough money to sort of fill the Affordable Housing Resource Center, the ARC's request, but after talking with the team at the Housing Authority, they felt that they could do well with the $16,000 provided. And then lastly, happily, in the home funding, we actually had more money than was requested, which is a nice problem to have. We had $76,000, and so after talking with Rush Homes and Habitat for Humanity, they recommended that they split the funding 50-50, and for the funds going to Habitat, they requested the funds be split $20,000 and then $18,000 between their two projects. So those are the recommendations that the committee is happy to make to council, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure Councilmember Wilder may have some comments as well.
It's an honor to serve in that particular committee. I'm new to that committee, but it's an honor. I've worked with CDBG for over 20 years prior to being on City Council, so it was good to see it on the other end. I worked with Ms. Walker for the 20 years plus at the beginning, and I'm so thankful for her leadership in that committee and the work that she's been doing with CDBG. I think this area is such a vital part for our community, especially with affordable housing and helping persons to get into their own houses, to houses that are for persons with disabilities and the various other things. But what I love, about this committee is that it has members from the community involved and get their input. And we were able to talk with them about different things, from walking trails to other portions, where they said, well, this might be better here. Again, it came from the input from the members of the community and the representatives there. So I really appreciate serving on the committee and the work that they do in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And so is there any further discussion? Councilmember Helgelson.
Just a quick question. Maybe Councilmember Wright, you said you could, either to you or to Ms. Walker, but the Tin Bridge Hill, they requested 400,000, but you gave them 417. How do you, just maybe you can, how you gave them more than they asked for?
Yes, so the feeling was that it was around the Biggers Park sort of trail improvements on Madison Street to the Blackwater Creek Trail. And the committee felt that, and in consultation with Mr. White, that they wanted to focus on the Tin Bridge Hill connection to, am I getting that right, to the Blackwater Creek Trail. And so because we had to make a cut somewhere to sort of to satisfy the, because we can only allocate 607,000, we had to cut somewhere. And so that $40,000 for the Madison Street trail improvement as part of Biggers Park, and so they felt that the 17,000 remaining could go safely to Tin Bridge Hill, and that would be a better investment of the dollars.
Because you said they had to make a cut.
Correct.
So that's why I'm surprised that somebody got.
Well, so we had to make some sort of cut because of the request for 630, but we only had $607,000 to allocate, so we had to cut something.
So did they, maybe this is wrong, but the request I'm seeing, it says they requested 400,000, but you actually gave them 417,000.
Correct.
So that's 17,000 more.
Correct. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Walker.
When they eliminated the trail connection in the budget for Biggers Park, it was $40,000, so they eliminated that totally, and then but to balance it, we had $17,000 left, and so they asked that additional $17,000 go into the Tin Bridge Hill to address the entrance to the Blackwater Creek Trail, if possible, once
So was that because normally they ask for the money, and you know, when I was on it, sometimes you don't have enough, and so you don't usually give more than they ask for, but that's.
The trail connection in the Biggers Park application was $40,000, so they wanted to totally not fund that at all. So that only left the $17,000 then to be allocated.
Gotcha. Okay.
Then the neighbors also indicated that the trail, or the other portion would be better accessible, and people would use that more, so the neighbors wanted that portion more so than other access.
I guess one is in Tin Bridge Hill and the other is Garland Hill, though. So you normally have people on the committee that that go for.
This actually did come from a neighbor who lived. The initial recommendation was made by a neighbor who's on the committee, who
Garland Hill.
in Garland Hill, who felt that it would be better applied.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion or questions? All right, the motion comes from the chair, so there's no need for the second. I'm ready to call for the vote. Councilmember Wright? Aye. Councilmember Wilder? Aye. Councilmember Nelson? Aye. Councilmember Pero? Aye. Councilmember Helgelson? Aye. Vice Mayor Dolan? Aye. And ayes have it. The motion is approved. Next is the public hearing to receive comments regarding the proposed amendments to the Citizen Participation Plan for the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Home Investment Partnerships Act or Home Program, and adopt a resolution approving the plan. Ms. Walker, this is your opportunity.
Thank you again. Mayor Tweedy, Vice Mayor Dolan, and members of council. City Council is conducting a public hearing to receive comments tonight regarding the proposed amendments to the Citizen Participation Plan for the CDBG and Home Program. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, requires entitlement cities that receive CDBG and Home Program funds to have a Citizen Participation Plan to provide policies and procedures for citizen participation for activities that are funded under the CDBG and Home Program. With the recent COVID-19 emergency, HUD has provided the availability of waivers of certain regulatory requirements associated with the CDBG and Home Program to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to facilitate assistance to eligible communities and households economically impacted by COVID-19. One waiver is related to the 30-day public comment period for substantial amendments to approved annual action plans. HUD has provided a waiver that reduces the 30-day minimum for the required public comment period for consolidated plans and annual action plans and substantial amendments to no fewer than 5 days. The second waiver is related to citizen participation where public places may be closed to the public or in-person participation may not be feasible or large gatherings may be considered a public health risk. The city may select to conduct public hearings and meetings virtually via a conference call or live web streaming with the ability to ask questions and provide comment in real time where public comment is to be heard. In order for the city to implement these waivers now for the COVID-19 emergency and the receipt of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, CARES Act, funds allocated to the city from HUD, and for future local, state, or federally declared disasters or emergency, the current citizen participation plan must be updated. The current citizen participation plan was updated by City Council on March 8, 2011. City staff recommends that the revisions to the plan that were highlighted in the copy of the plan that I provided to you and that Angie has now put up on the screen there for you be made so that it will be better, that it will align with the contents of the plan with HUD requirements for emergencies and to expand the public outreach within the consolidated plan process. The amendments included in the update of the plan are: number one, the length of the public comment and display period for the consolidated plan or annual action plan and substantial amendments will be consistent with HUD's requirements, which during the COVID-19 has been reduced to 5 days. Draft documents for public comment and review will be made available on the city's website. Copies of the draft document will be mailed or emailed upon request if possible. Public meetings may be held as virtual meetings using local cable access, television, or other online platforms for public viewing with the option for real-time questions to be presented. The city may choose to hold one public hearing during the Consolidated Plan annual plan process and its second required public hearing during the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report CAPER process for the same program year. The city may choose to cancel the Community Development Advisory Committee public meeting or hold a conference call if a public meeting is not feasible. In addition, HUD has also expanded the list of agencies and individuals that the city should consult with during the consolidated plan preparation process. They include broadband internet service providers and organizations engaged in narrowing the digital divide, agencies whose primary responsibilities include the management of flood-prone areas, public land or water resources, and emergency management agencies. All other sections of the current citizen participation plan remain unchanged. And I will just add that, as you all are probably aware, the city has received funding for COVID-19 projects, which will be presented to you all at the May 26th meeting. So these amendments will not only address being able to fund those funds, but also in the future, if there's an emergency, then we already have our citizen participation plan updated and ready for these types of instances. The public notice was placed in the news in advance on Tuesday, April the 28th, and through social media. The draft plan provided to you has the recommended changes, as I said, highlighted. I did not receive any written or voicemail for this public hearing.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Thank you, and because there are no emails or phone calls, no rebuttal is needed. The public hearing is closed and the matter rests with council. And the motion is, I need a motion, because this did not have to go before CDAC. So
correct.
I need a motion to approve the citizen participation plan for the community development block grant.
So moved. Second.
All right, the motion has been moved and second. Are there any further questions? All right, thank you. I'll call for the voice vote. Councilmember Wright?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilder?
Aye.
Councilmember Nelson?
Aye.
Councilmember Pero?
Aye.
Councilmember Helgelson? Vice Mayor Dolan?
Aye.
And aye, the motion passes. Thank you. Next is the public hearing regarding the consideration of adopting the Forest Brook Roads Corridor Study as part of the city's Comprehensive Plan 2013-2030. The purpose of the study is to provide the City of Lynchburg with a detailed planning level assessment of the options for future needs of Forest Brook Road that will enhance safety while accommodating future capacity of the roadway. The plan provides the following recommendations: trimming and maintenance of vegetation, upgrading guardrails, installation of curb and gutter and sidewalk, improve intersection radius at Forest Brook Road and Lakeside Drive, improve the horizontal curvature of the roadway, and ensure adequate sight distances. And Mr. Smith will be giving this presentation. or at least a summary of the request, as we say. Thank you.
Tom, do I just click on it? Of course, I can't see what I'm supposed to be doing when I'm up here in front of you. Tom, why can't I see, like, view show? I've only used these things for decades. There we go. Okay, thank you. Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you for having me this evening. I'm happy to give you an overview of the process that we went through and happy to answer any questions. I know this has been a long day for you, so I don't want to belabor things, but I'll go into as much detail as you like. Several years ago, the city engineering department asked the Metropolitan Planning Organization at the time, now Transportation Planning Organization, to conduct a study of Forest Brook Road. We were able to get that into our budget pipeline last fiscal year and conducted a study using one of our on-call consultants. And again, let's try this. Okay, so just to remind you, Forest Brook Road runs a little over a mile between Lakeside Drive and Old Forest Road, crosses railroad tracks right in the middle near Findlay Corporation. It is a very old road. It was built before the Civil War. It was a country road that is now an urban connector between two arterials. It's a mix of residential, commercial, and industrial, and gets a fair amount of cut-through traffic. But because of its geometry, because of the grades and the curves, it's a little bit more dangerous. And if folks aren't used to driving that road, they can catch themselves going too fast, which we actually found during this study. So there are not as many crashes along that corridor. This doesn't show up very well. There are not as many crashes along that corridor as we expected to find. But in the 2-year window that we looked at, we had just over half a dozen, most of them just property damage, not any personal injury. And they were fairly well distributed throughout the corridor. We did look at traffic volume analysis for the 2 intersections at each end of the corridor, at Old Forest Road and also Lakeside Drive, but we only analyzed those 2 intersections as they related to Forest Brook Road itself. So Old Forest Road had upgrades done within the last 10 years or so that significantly improved operations there. Lakeside Drive in the long-range plan has already some improvements kind of scoped out. So we were really just looking at the Forest Brook Road corridor. On May 29th, 2019, we had a public meeting. We did that at Lynchburg Collision. They were very nice to open up their facility for us. We always like to have public meetings in the neighborhood if possible, so that people can walk to the meeting if necessary. And we did have a number of people who were residents come to the meeting. We had about 30 stakeholders attend. The overview of the comments received were we had a lot of people talk about the fact that there are no pedestrian facilities along Forest Brook Road. I'm a Lynchburg resident, lifelong resident, but even just looking at it in a different way, studying that corridor, I was very surprised at the number of pedestrians who used that, particularly folks who live in the trailer park on the Lakeside Drive end who are walking to Walmart. And we saw drivers coming up on pedestrians and being surprised by these folks walking on the shoulder or out in the road. Drivers don't obey the speed limit, and if you looked at some of the data in the proposed plan, the speed limit is vagrantly disobeyed along that corridor, which is an issue. There are poor sight distances when turning from side streets onto Forest Brook Road. And it's also difficult for trucks to maneuver. And like I say, we have a number of industrial facilities on that corridor, especially in the middle. So through the process, we got information from the residents and from stakeholders. We had our engineering team work on some recommendations, and we came up with some short-term and long-term recommendations. The short-term ones are fairly easy. Trimming and continual maintenance of existing overgrown vegetation, that's actually been done, I noticed the other day, at least for a part of the corridor. And also upgrading the guardrail throughout the corridor to meet current standards and making some signage improvements as well. The long-term recommendations are a little bit more expensive, and of course it'll be up to council to determine when and if you would like to do something with this. But the long-term recommendations, the Planning Commission recommended to you Alternative 2. Alternative 2 includes adding pedestrian accommodations, stormwater facilities, and then getting some objects out of the clear zone. The clear zone is the area, if a car leaves the roadway, it's the area, the amount of space that they need to be able to regain control and get back on the roadway. So if there's something like a utility pole in the clear zone, the car and the utility pole are going to have a conflict, and that usually doesn't end well for the passengers of the car. And we do have some utility poles in the clear zone along that road. So some improvements that we recommend to be implemented include improving the intersection radius, the turning radius at Lakeside Drive and Forest Brook Road, lengthen the left turn lane storage capacity along Forest Brook as Forest Brook approaches both Old Forest and Lakeside, and then upgrading of pedestrian accommodations at those two intersections to meet ADA requirements. Also, a fairly major thing is to improve the horizontal curvature of the roadway at that really sharp curve near the trailer park at Monroe Drive. And that would involve shaving some property off of the south side of the road to create not widen the road, not straighten the curve, because if we straighten that curve, we're actually going to encourage people to drive faster, and speed's already an issue. But if we make that curve a geometrically correct curve, drivers will be able to maintain control through that. And then, again, work on sight distances, evaluate turning radii at the industrial entrances as well. Now, of course, if any large-scale developments happen on that road, there's a fair bit of undeveloped property on both sides. If anything happens, then we'll have to reevaluate. So just to show you the alternative 1 and 2, alternative 1 includes adding a sidewalk, and it takes more, and then having shoulder/bike lanes, and it takes more right-of-way. Alternative 1 was 46 feet of right-of-way, which is a pretty wide for there. Planning Commission recommended to you alternative 2, though, which doesn't have the shoulder bike lanes, but does have curb and gutter, and it needs only 39 feet of right-of-way. So when you look at the little table that was also in the plan, I'll come back to curve realignment in a second, you see the comparisons between the two alternatives. Alternative 1 has significant impacts to right-of-way, whereas alternative 2 has minor impacts to right-of-way because we need less right-of-way. So that's actually a fairly good comparison chart between the two, so you can see the trade-offs. Just to go back to the curve realignment, this just shows just shaving off the, let's see if the laser, the existing roadway comes through here, a rather sharp curve. The idea would be to just shave off that to create a consistent curve all the way around. Now, at the Planning Commission meeting, we did have some public there, which was great, and a few did speak against this because of the potential taking of property. But as we discussed, there's really no way of fixing this curve without taking some property, if that's what council wanted to do. One suggestion from a member of the public was to come the other way. Well, if we're going to do that, then we have to actually change the approaches to the curve, and it would end up taking much more property. So, but again, that's up to you guys to determine what you would like to do. So those are the recommendations in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Councilmember Pero.
Thank you. Just to clarify, we're not talking about taking property, we're talking about acquiring additional property from the owners.
Yes.
All right. So by putting this into the comprehensive plan, that allows us to apply for, I guess, VDOT funding in terms of smart scale, as well as revenue sharing funding and other potential funding sources?
presence in a plan, so the city's comp plan is one of the boxes that need to be checked to apply to be eligible for that funding, yes.
Okay. And based on my experience in dealing with Smart Scale, this looks like something that Smart Scale could afford because of safety, and it looks to be something like an alignment adjustment there is relatively low cost. So those are good. I guess they're good things to merge together to score favorably and to get funded in something like this. So that would effectively not cost the city anything, and we can improve the road conditions. Is Mr. White still here? Yes. I think I remember hearing something about, I can't recall, Mr. Smith, I did not read the entire plan. I'm sorry. But I don't recall, there's talk about alignment or realignment of the traffic lights there on Lakeside Drive. That's part of this plan, or is that another plan?
No, that would be future work related to other Lakeside Drive work that's in the long range.
So,
plan.
Mr. Wright, when is that? Or were you talking about that, Mr. Wright?
Yeah.
Or Keith Wright?
Yeah, we're in a public hearing.
Oh, excuse me.
So
I'm so
that's
sorry.
Okay. That's all right. That's okay. So, right, you'll get called back up. So just a formality here. All right, thank you. Is there anyone, thank you, Mr. Smith, for your presentation and summary. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor? All right, thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? All right, are there any emails or phone calls from citizens on this topic? All right, thank you. No rebuttal is needed. The public hearing is closed, and the matter now rests with council. And thank you for allowing us to finish that formality there. And so I will defer back to Councilmember Pero if you have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay.
My apologies. I just was so engrossed in the presentation. So I guess Mr. Newland or Mr. White, could you link this with the Lakeside Drive plan, if you can?
Yeah, this is part of a project that we have to realign Wendell Drive.
Okay.
Where you come across McConville, comes straight down, ties into Lakeside Drive. So the two signals at Forest Brook and Wendell, one of them would be moved down the road to where the new McConville Road would tie into. So it would separate the distance between those signals and make it function much more efficient.
Separate the distance, the signal at Forest Brook Road would not change necessarily.
Correct.
Okay, so they're related projects in the fact that they affect traffic in similar patterns, I guess, but it's two completely separate. One doesn't have to go contingent on the other or anything like that.
Correct.
It's really independent. Okay, Madam Mayor, I move that the ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion's been made and second. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Pero.
No, ma'am.
All right, Councilmember Wilder. Thank you. Is there no further discussion? I will call for a vote. Councilmember Wright. Oh, Councilmember Helgelson. I'm sorry about that.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Sorry.
So this goes in as far as the plan. And so this is obviously, there's different alternatives as far as funding. I read through some of the minutes at some of the businesses there that obviously didn't want to have some of the language or the road taken. So when this is adopted, that doesn't mean we're going to approve it for the funding, right, Mr. Martin? I think that's you.
Correct. Adopting this would allow the city to move forward with looking for funding alternatives. Obviously, I think, as Councilman Pero pointed out, if, as part of the design, we would enter into negotiations with the property owners to try and obtain the property.
Because Mr. Smith alluded to the two alternatives and that the Planning Commission adopted alternative 2. We just adopted the plan, or we're just looking at adopting the whole plan with both alternatives? Or why would they have adopted one alternative versus the other?
Alternative 2 is the preferred alternative, and I believe the plan actually lists alternative 2 as being the preferred alternative.
But it could be either with this motion, or is that specifically, I mean, obviously if you got both of them in there and things change over the time, you know.
It could.
Okay. So was alternative 2 the 6.7 million one, or was that the less expensive one?
Alternative 2 is the 6.7 million, yes.
And alternative 1 was the like 4.3 or something, 4.7, okay. And so either way, it doesn't, the adoption of this plan doesn't preclude one versus the other at a future date whenever it
Correct.
works for a budget. Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All right, thank you. I'll call for the voice vote now. Councilmember Wright.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilder. Aye. Councilmember Nelson. Councilmember Pero. Aye. Councilmember Helgeson.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dolan. Thank you, and aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I have on here that we will conclude with a video about the restocking of the Little Free Library.
Yes, thank you. Now
Oh, the COVID. There we go.
solid waste ordinance.
There we go. Thank you. I'm sorry. Keep me honest. Okay. Yes, we have the consideration of the motion for the solid waste, and go back to my. Yeah, don't see it. If you could read that. Oh, there we go. Hold on one moment. No, I have moved it somewhere. Can you please read that out for me? Well, right. Thank you very much. Revisions to the solid waste ordinance, and Dr. Wodeka, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So Ms. Hart is here, and she will present the specific changes to, the recommended changes to the solid waste ordinance. You will remember that we have had a number of conversations about refuse collection and solid waste throughout the city. And generally tonight, we are presenting the code changes that reflect the decisions that council has previously made, and we will need your approval on those ordinance changes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hart?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, what I plan to do is walk through this section by section unless you tell me to do something different, page by page, so that we can review everything. I'm hoping that there are just some pages with grammatical errors that we're fixing, and we won't have to spend much time on it. Is that acceptable to City Council?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, section 21.2-1. City manager added some language that she is responsible for proper management of the solid waste system. 21-2-3. We wrote in some clarifying language about brush to clarify for citizens and for us what is acceptable for brush. And I'm going on to past the definitions. 21.2-4, it's somewhere around page 8, not sure how it shows up on your iPads, just some grammatical changes, basically. Again, minor grammatical changes on 21.5, 6, and 7. 21.8 and 9, just some grammatical changes. 21.11. Clarifies how you can receive an extra trash cart and the fact that you will receive an extra fee for that trash cart should you ask for one. We finalized that, the fee structures on May 5th. Onward to page 11, the next major change, 21.2-special collections. There's a lot of changes in this one. We tried to identify better what a business is by calling it I'm sorry, this isn't the business stuff, by talking about brush and bulk and strictly prohibiting certain things like contractor cutting and land clearing. On to the next page, we made brush and bulk effective October 1st, the changes, and talked about the schedule that we presented at the February 11th meeting to City Council, that we're going to try to schedule based on your trash day, a week that you will be collected for brush and bulk. 21-220, we actually limit the size of the piles to basically 6 feet in height and 8 feet long. So that's going to be for everybody. So whether it's a landlord set out, a clean out, once a month, you will be able to set out a pile 6 feet high and 8 feet long. That'll limit our time at each pile, hopefully, and we'll be able to move on and get more customers covered. Specifically, in the last paragraph of 21.2-20, we prohibit loose household trash in bulk piles, so all the clothes and different things, in theory, we will not have that anymore. 21.2-6, we did clarify the definition of a business by saying that it's a small detached commercial establishment. In other words, a single-family home, a small brick building, that type of thing. 21, then it goes on to, again, clarify who's eligible and the fact that we can suspend trash collection should you not comply with the details of this ordinance. On to the last paragraph in that chapter identifies a $250 minimum charge for failure to comply with this ordinance, and that is somewhat similar to the weed complaint ordinance. And again, our theory is to try to really get people into compliance and make the fine stiff enough or the fee stiff enough that they will get into compliance. So a minimum of $250 plus any additional costs that we incur. 21.2-27 talks about the fact we offer physical limitation services. The next major section, 21.2-31, it's my page 16, talks about disposal fees, billing, payment, and penalties. This is when we get into more details about the fees and how the water bills, or how the bills will be processed and how they will be credited when they come in. They will be processed first or credited first to disposal charges, then stormwater, then sewer, and then finally to water charges. The rest of that page, page 17, just basically gets rid of all the language about the decals. Same thing on page 18, gets rid of all the language about decals, and it does talk a little bit about the central business district does get twice a week trash pickup, and so they will get a double fee on their water account. Again, going on to page 19, eliminating a lot of the decal language, and also it removes the authority of the city manager to provide free decal service to SNAP, Tax Relief, and Tyriana. We made that decision on March 10th. Again, page 20, we just eliminating language about decals, and 21.2-32 is just minor changes. Same on page 21. No changes on page 22. 21.2-47, again, talking about the $250 fine plus costs incurred for noncompliance. And we got rid of all the other misdemeanors, and we're just going to consider a class 4 misdemeanor potentially, although we would prefer to do the fee and keep this out of courts. Courts do not appreciate having trash brought before them. They've got other priorities. On to page 24. Basically, at the top of the page, it's talking about it's unlawful to dispose of trash in pedestrian cans or in city dumpsters. In other words, we do have some of that in city parks and along the city streets. And then just minor language in 21.2-51. 21.2-52 talks about landlord setouts, and it would be our intent that they would comply with this ordinance, so they will not be able to set out huge piles of trash. They'll have to comply with the size that we have written in here. Finally, on page 26, 21.2-58, we did restrict some of the trucks that could come into the Concord Turnpike Convenience Center, and the reason that we did that is people are bringing so much trash in a pickup truck followed by a trailer that they actually fill up a bin with one load, and that affects other people who are not able to. Then it causes us to have to pull it more often, and it could cause us to have to close the convenience center. Those bins are pulled by a contractor, and they don't work on Saturday. So that's been a problem for us, and we really also cannot take dump beds, dump truck beds. Normally, the Livestock Road landfill is open half a day so that people could take their goods there. However, during COVID-19, they have closed on Saturday. So hopefully they'll restore that service. And the rest of the stuff is just the rest of the pages are minor changes. So
All right.
with that, I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have or take any comments.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Hart? Councilmember Para.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a little concerned about the restriction on the trailer and the dump bed. But I think your explanation sounds, I mean, that person could therefore inconvenience many people. Can we just, assuming the ordinance passes, I'm imagining it will, could we just make it very clear to people that if they're hauling a trailer or if they have a dump bed truck, that they need to go to that they're not accepted at the Concord Turnpike and they need to go out to Livestock Road. But a dump bed truck, I mean, there are a lot of dump bed trucks that may not necessarily be full of anything. They're just going to come in and, like, I'm talking like kind of a low side dump bed truck. I had one. It was a 66 GMC that we had for a farm truck, which was a great dump bed truck. But occasionally you put a couple things on the back and just take it somewhere. So would somebody like that be restricted from coming in, or is it? Let me re-ask this. Is the ordinance restricts it by vehicle type, but really should it be restricted by quantity? I know it's harder to do.
It is harder to do. I would think that, what we're talking about, the language is actually clarified in the next sentence, basically saying that, we want pickup trucks, SUVs, cars, more of a pickup truck size type truck is what we're looking at for the convenience center. If it had a dump bed in, and some people do put a dump bed in their pickup truck, especially a 3/4 ton, we would certainly accept that. It's when it gets to 1 ton and 2 ton trucks that it becomes a problem, and they're filling up almost a full bin.
But again, it really relates to the size of the load and what they're bringing in.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
I guess that the operators may have a little bit of leniency if somebody comes in and they've got a white good in the back.
Right.
Well, something that you accept, a couple of bags of trash.
Correct, yes.
Then you may let that. Then the operator could let that come through.
Absolutely, that would be completely acceptable.
Okay. Thanks.
The people there are different, right? I mean, that's the regional authority. So, I mean, that's not under your purview.
Good question.
So it's not under, it's not like you're giving because it's not like your staff you're giving directions, so.
Well, actually, we do. The Scale House is operated and run by a regional service authority individual. They're working with their software and handling the money. We actually staff it with a city staff member to actually review what's coming into the landfill, make sure it's legal, it's not.
And he's great, by the way.
Well, thank you. I will pass that along to him. So we do man that every single day that it's open. There's a city employee there.
But the person that you're coming in on is on the scale.
Correct.
That's the.
And she is supposed to be monitoring as well. There's actually, she can get up on a overhead sidewalk or overhead walkway and actually peer down into a truck if she needed to. So she should be monitoring as well as our particular employee as well.
Yeah, I got read the riot act when I came through last time, a little while ago, because I needed a water bill, but the water bill comes to a PO address, and I had to scramble to find something that had my physical address on it.
Yes,
but it was
you
a
have
bit of a
to have
challenge. Also, what is a challenge, and I'm sorry that I'm digressing here a little bit, is the fact that one of the scales doesn't work. Not that I go to the dump all the time, but I have been lately.
Well,
so it'd be,
I go too, so I got you. Yeah.
cost prohibitive, I guess, to repair the exit scale so you don't have to circle around and loop back through time and time again?
Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. It's about $60,000 per scale. So
Wow.
We have just elected to try to work with it like it is, certainly, and hopefully working with the city manager and our finance director. That is the hope, is to be able to replace that scale at some point.
That's not a real revenue generator is it either?
No, because most of the trash, bulk is free, brush is free as long as it's clean, and 500 pounds per month of household trash is free. So,
I'll go ahead and move the ordinance if you'd like me to, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. The motion's been made and second. Any further conversation? Councilmember Helgeson?
Just there's a lot of different things on here. I mean, this is something that I think we should, there's a lot of different changes to language. You know, one thing that I saw, 21.2-18, if we can find that. Yeah, I think it'd be wise for us to kind of, where's my, I mean, I don't know if we need to jump on this right now, but where's the unauthorized removal? So, you know, I realize that's somewhat in there, but lots of times people put a bunch of junk on the side of the street, and then other people come by and pick it up. And, you know, the old saying of one man's junk is another man's treasure, which is a nice thing, because that's a reuse. That's somebody coming by got a guy in my neighborhood, he drives this little lawnmower with a cart on the back. He picks up stuff, whether it be scrap metal or whether he finds something to reuse and to repurpose, and, you know, making it a crime for someone to pick up somebody's trash. What's the purpose of that?
well, certainly when we've had that happen before, we've had people that have made a huge mess on the right-of-way by tearing trash apart. You know, somebody drives by and picks up a washer because they want to scrap it. That's not going to be a problem, but we would like to be able to have some control over people pulling trash off the curb and making a huge mess.
But this doesn't say that. I guess it just says, should be unlawful for any person to remove solid waste.
Which is what's been in the code. Which is what's been in the code.
Yeah.
That's no change to the code.
It's just changing the word curb.
Correct.
And I could see too, because isn't it for landlords and that sort of thing, it has to be out there for a certain amount of time, 48 hours, I believe?
Correct, that is correct.
And so if someone's coming through pulling somebody's stuff in that situation, then that's unlawful?
That would be correct, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All right.
But there's a lot of things. Is there any reason to, I guess back to what was stated earlier, is there a reason we got to approve this today rather than, there's a lot of changes in here. I looked at some of them. I didn't look at all of them. You know, I thought there'd be a kind of a presentation on actually what it does. It's kind of nice to let it kind of get out there, to let people, last time I think we had the set outs that we kind of met on pretty quickly. And then after, I think we kind of heard from people and we realized, well, maybe it wasn't a landlord set out that was the issue. Maybe it's something different. So I don't know what the rush is, if we table this and kind of, you know, come back with it and finish it in a couple weeks, or look at questions better, but.
I would just remind you that we've had 5 meetings about this, and almost all the changes that have been in here have already been voted on. The council.
I think there's some different ones in here, aren't there?
Not much.
There are not many.
The significant changes are actually pointed out in your council report on the front page. Those are significant changes that, and really the two that you have not heard about yet were the $250 service fee and limiting the size of the pile. Those are the two things you have not heard about, although we alluded to them last week when we were discussing how we were going to be able to control the set out. So we alluded to them, but we figured we'd bring them here tonight.
So how are you going to, right now, we don't fine anybody. So is it going to be an automatic, you pick it up every month, or what's the?
I guess, you know, my feeling on education and enforcement is we're going to start with education, and we're going to try to work with people. And one of the things I thought of is I certainly would like to just try to get people into compliance. In other words, if you set it out incorrectly, ask you to actually set it out correctly. If you could straighten the pile up, get the trash in trash bags and prepaid blue bags, separate your brush, separate your bulk, we can avoid the fee. So I think that's going to be our first little bit of education. And then when we've got repeat offenders, that would be the time that we would use the $250 fee.
So what is the, you can do that every week, or what is, I think you said something about once a month.
The actual scheduling would be once a month per resident, so that's correct.
Okay.
And other than that, you really should not be setting bulk out other than once a month.
Okay. And so what was the calling or just setting it out? And
The idea would not be that they would need to call. That
Okay.
Our idea would be that we would comb each, for instance, if you're the Monday, your trash pickup is on Monday, you would set it out the first week of the month by 7 a.m. Monday morning, and then we would comb the entire Monday route. We got 6 refuse trucks, so we would try to comb that entire route during that week and try to get that neighborhood or that area clean.
so I mean, years ago, when we came by with the truck, they had the little GPS thing that they would click and say, hey, we got either brush or we got bulk. So they would kind of code it. So with the truck drivers already, the waste collectors are already doing that. Is that something different, or what?
Yes, we are proposing something different. We're actually proposing combing, and a lot of times by the time we got out there to pick stuff up, there was other stuff set out, so they would have to bypass that, and that's always a problem. People also get upset because they don't understand that we collect brush and bulk separately, so that if the driver's assigned to collect brush today, he is going to drive by bulk piles. So that's why we just thought doing the combing might be clear.
So who's doing the combing?
The drivers.
Okay, as they're picking up trash?
Correct.
Like the cans?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, with the knuckle boom trucks, yes.
Okay, and so now with that, I've heard from some elderly folks that obviously it's part of this though, but they would do one blue bag a month, for $1.25, and now their bill is gonna go up, which would be, I guess, $15 a year, and now it's gonna go up to the $10 a month, which is $120, right?
That is correct, yes. It's our intent that everybody will pay the trash fee. That's correct.
And so now, since everybody's paying the trash fee, and you mentioned that before that the trash fee wasn't a cost of how much trash, how do we get the bigger cans then? Like the 96-gallon, the big ones that we could utilize?
What would need to happen is, I believe we brought that to city council, and it was turned down.
And again, I think I emailed.
So we brought 96-gallon cans. That was the original recommendation. Council said, no, you need to keep the cans you have. So you have a 32-gallon can and a 64-gallon can. Now, if somebody is going to want to change from a 32-gallon can to a 64 in that time frame, we're going to have a process. We met about this morning, as I mentioned to you in my email. We're going to have a process to be able to make those changes out. We are existing right now on the decals that people have already paid for. So we're going to have some grace period. Exactly what that looks like, we're still kind of working those details out. But there will be a time for those change outs if necessary.
So
there are 3,000 32-gallon cans out there right now. So we don't think that everyone will change. We think some will change, but we don't think everyone will change. I know a lot of the reason that we wanted to keep the 32-gallon cans was that because people in our community meetings said, charge, we want a consistent charge, but we want a smaller can because it's easier to deal with. So it's a convenience, and that's why it's there.
And I think, I don't know, maybe a council thought it saw that, but I thought a lot of the discussion was a smaller can for a smaller price. But if you have the same price for a small can, I mean, maybe everybody saw that. I didn't, but
We did.
I think we've been through that
Yes.
extensively.
Yeah.
We did.
We talked about the billing process, and that would just be for the director of finance's staff. That would almost be impossible between my staff and their staff keeping up with that and having the proper charge.
And so with, I understood that, but so with that, so if we're going to get charged the same, I want to throw away as much crap as I possibly can. And I want my neighbors to throw away as much as they can as well, because I would certainly much rather it be in the trash and in the landfill than blowing around my yard. Correct. So having the biggest can possible, since there's no extra variable cost involved with that or the filling up of the landfill, the biggest can we can get, I think, would be the best for most citizens. Like if I could push out a 96-gallon, granted, I realize some older folks may you know, maybe a little concerned about the wheels, but the bigger you got, I think the better to get rid of the most trash as possible, so.
Well, I think that might, I'm not sure, but that would be an increase over the $10, is it? Then we're talking new cans, and council had decided to keep the size cans based on the community meetings, and, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I'm saying if we're saying now that the size of the trash can is irrelevant, because how much trash is going in, because the variable costs aren't it. The fixed cost is the actual 90% of driving down the road and the picking it up. Have as big as can as possible was my.
Yeah, but I think the point is that we would have to buy new trash cans.
Right, and yeah, that's the purpose, is that we had to buy new trash cans. So I think a part of getting the fee that we arrived at the other week was keeping the trash cans, but there is an option for 32-gallon to go to 64-gallon if they so choose. Correct. And so, right, so thank you. Did I see Councilmember Pero? Did you sit up for something?
No, ma'am, I was going to make I just remember the big rollout of Bart the Cart. Correct. And how and what a logistical nightmare it would be to try to not only purchase and distribute, but then also dispose of all those other trash cans. Correct. Which would then create even more waste probably. So, yeah, that's
Thank
it.
you.
I was just thinking about all the different scenarios there. That's all.
All right, I just have a question on education. As you roll out the education process, can you bring back to council that presentation of how you'll message this out to the community?
Yes, absolutely, we can do that. We just started talking about that today as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. So the motion, and let me see, is for the adoption of the waste ordinance, and it's been motion and second. Any further discussion? I will call for the vote. Thank you, Councilmember Wright.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilder. Aye. Councilmember Nelson. Aye. Councilmember Pero.
Aye.
Councilmember Helgelson.
No.
Vice Mayor Dolan.
Aye.
And I will vote aye also. Ayes have it. The motion passes. Thank you. And next, we have an update on COVID. I'd like to get through that. Thank you. And this would be, yes, Dr. Wodeka.
Yes, ma'am. So thank you very much. A number of exciting things going on related to COVID updates for our emergency support functions. We'll start off with ESF 7, which is resource support. One of the things we've mentioned tonight is about the courts being closed, and so those will be opening. So we are working to provide PPE for the courts to reopen as that occurs. Agricultural and natural resources, ESF 11, again, we're continuing to work with the school system to deliver meals as well as in the neighborhoods, in the high-density neighborhoods. Again, we're averaging about 110 meals per day, 3 delivery days a week. The long-term recovery and mitigation group, ESF 14, has 2 really great things. So we are creating a milestone timeline to evaluate economic recovery based on models that the city of Harrisonburg and Charlottesville and the city of Danville have used, just outlining best practices for how the business community continue to resume business as restrictions are lifted. External affairs, we're working with the registrar's office to raise awareness. Number one, the new date, as well as safe practice, the new election date, as well as the new practices for the election. The volunteer donations, ESF 11, we're continuing to have the senior center, the senior elder assurance support line. We're averaging approximately 10 calls a day. We're seeing increased calls when the governor makes various announcements that he does. Just a couple of data points. We mentioned last week that we would talk about unemployment data. For the week ending May 2nd, the Lynchburg initial claims total since the beginning for unemployment of the crisis has been 6,661, but the ongoing claims are 4,312. One is too many, so it certainly is high and is a lot, but that gives you the context for what the actual numbers look like from the Unemployment Commission. Finally, we were really excited to announce the rollout of the Economic Development Authority's Business Recovery Loan Program. This is a $250,000 program that was reallocated from another program that we have, a loan program that we have. These are for smaller businesses that were unable to receive the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. They can cover rent, payroll, utilities, accounts payable, et cetera, between $5,000 and $25,000. They're not forgivable, but application and origination fees have been waived. We will be charging an interest rate, fixed rate of 1% below the prime closing rate of the day. So very excited about that. Ms. Upshur is here and she can answer any questions you might have about that, but that's, I think, is going to be a great thing for our community, and it will provide a lot of opportunities for people to be resilient.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Wilder?
Are those applications online, or how do persons apply for those? Online? Great, thank you, appreciate it.
All right, Councilmember Pero.
Quick questions. That loan package is very exciting. I hope that there will be some people that will take advantage of it. All right, that's great. Secondly, we talked about earlier today, we mentioned that the city is going to get a significant chunk of funding from the federal government. It's a one-time fund that's going to come in that would be able to be, I know you haven't had a chance to review the information yet, so what it seems to me that we should try to do is look for funds in the current fiscal year that we could supplant and carry over as one-time dollars. We should also look at what eligible costs we have in the upcoming fiscal year that can be applied. Do we know whether this is FY20 money or FY21 money?
Funds need to be expended no later than December 30th of 2020.
Okay, no later than December, so it's partial FY21 money.
6 months of FY2021.
Okay, so if we could identify those, I think in the budget process that staff's going to have to take a while to do that. That's not going to be something that happens before the budget's decided. It makes sense to me that if council could resolve the budget and then let staff have time to look for ways to best apply that. Hopefully we could use it all. It would
we
be
will
awful.
do our very best to use it.
Yeah, but I'm concerned that the requirements may be so stringent that it couldn't all be applied, but I'm sure you'll be very creative in how you're looking at that. And then come back in Q1 and make some adjustments to see where in this irrational time, I guess, and maybe irrational is not the right word, but unprecedented time, how you could use those one-time dollars to plug a gap. I'm not thinking about increasing reoccurring revenues, but just plug the gap. I know it can't be used for revenue shortfalls, but in fact, if you level fund, that's what it's doing. If you plug the gap for those expenses, and that way you're not incurring new expenses going forward. So anyway, those are my thoughts about how you should think about using those funds going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further thoughts, discussion? All right, thank you for that update. All right, and let's see, we've gotten through everything we changed on the list. The regular meeting will conclude with a video. Are we at our video moment now? All right, about the restocking of the Little Free Library.
Yes, so LTV put together this little less than 2-minute video about the restocking.
Oh, I'm seeing a little, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor, this is the first I've heard of it.
Oh, okay. That's all right then.
I'd be happy to summarize it for you or invite you to.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you. No problem. Sorry you had to come out from the back. Thank you. Thank you. That's okay, no problem. Sometimes it happens. It was on my paper, so thank you very much. All right, thank you. Next, we will go into consideration of a closed meeting for the discussion and consideration of prospective candidates for the position of city manager pursuant to section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. May I have a motion to go into a closed meeting? So moved. All right, thank you. In a second? Sure. All right, thank you. Motion's been made in second. We are in closed session. Thank you very much.